more conscious of your divinity, just conscious of your divinity, that you have the power to negotiate the presence of this energy to do incredible things for yourself. But there are 3 things you have to do. The first is you have to have what I call recognition of this force. And recognition of this force is nothing more than simply saying to yourself, I am open to the idea that there is a force that is greater than I am, to which I am always connected, that is everywhere at once, and no place that it is not. And I would like to just say that it is available to me. You don't have to have proof of it. You don't have to have anybody confirm it. It is just simply an awareness that it exists. See, once you recognize that this force that opens the flowers, that keeps the planet in alignment, that grows your fingernails every night and beats your heart, independent of your opinion about it. You go to sleep at night, you look at your fingernails the next morning, they're longer than they were the night before, and you're sound asleep. Not only that, but whatever force it was that grew yours, grew the person next to yours and grew the people across the oceans as well. There's a force that's growing everybody's fingernails, whether they like it or not, and growing their hair, well, most of them, and beating their hearts and circulating their food and opening the flowers and turning, acorns into oak trees and turning embryos into human beings. There's a force. There's something. I can't see it. I don't know what it is. I recognize it. If you recognize it and that there's no place that it's not, the beauty of that is that it's also then in everything that you would like to attract into your life. And here you've just taken one step towards diminishing the role of the ego in your life. If you can recognize that there is a power in the universe that is that is part of you, if there's no place that it is not, then it has to be in you. And if it is in you, and there's no place that it's not, it also has to be in whatever you'd like to attract into your life. So all you have to say is, I'm already connected to that which I would like to attract into my life. That what you want, wants you. All you have to do is somehow figure out a way to realign your inner intention and recognize, I am not separate from it, I am connected to it, it just hasn't shown up in my space yet. But I'm already connected to it. That's a very powerful insight. That's why people at higher levels of consciousness can manifest, because there's no delay between what they put in their attention on and having it show up. It's why the gift of fish and loaves is the ability to see hungry people and to think food, and it shows up. And even the least among you can do all that I have done. It's all within you to be able to do that. So that shifting takes place first and foremost with the recognition that there is a force, there is a power. That's how you treasure your divinity. The second thing that you do is what I call realization. And realization is the time in your life when you stop telling yourself that I believe this or don't believe this on the basis of what somebody else says or does. It comes from my own personal direct experience. It's the only thing I will rely upon. I will not rely upon the written word. I will not rely upon the spoken word. I will not rely upon someone else out there telling me that this is what God is or how it works. I will rely upon the realization of it through my own direct conscious experience. And I will not try to persuade anybody else. I will not listen to or argue with anybody about whether it's real or not real, whether it works or doesn't work. I know it. Be still and know. And you have that knowing, and the realization is there, and you trust in that realization. I trust in my own experience. I've had it. I have talked to this force. I have seen it work. I've put my attention on it. I've been able to manifest what I want in my life. I've been able to heal myself. I've been able to help heal others. I've been able to feel comfort in times when others feel sadness. These are all things that I know come to me through my direct experience of God. And it doesn't matter what anybody else out there says or does. Realization. I now realize it and trust in that. That's the second step. And the third I call reverence. And reverence is where you begin to have a daily commune with this power, with this force. That you are not only aware of it, but you are communing quietly with it. You're communing quietly with it.
This is a very important and significant quality that separates out great teachers, great philosophers, great thinkers, poets, prophets, the people that, again, that we respect and admire, is that they are not doing what they're doing because of what is going to come to them. They're doing what they're doing because this inner voice says, I can't not do it. I'll die if I don't. I've got to get my music out. I can't die with my music in me. And so people who are detached from outcome, the irony of being detached from outcome, I think is summed up in Thoreau's definition of success. I think the best definition of success I've ever heard came right from his mouth. He said, if you advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavor to live the life which you have imagined, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. That is, if you find what you know you have to do, what your intuition, what your inner voice tells you is why you're here, and you pursue that and let go of outcome, be unconcerned with how it's going to work out, you're going to find more and more things arriving and showing up in your life. I mean, it's been absolutely true for me. When I detach from outcome, I do my best writing. When I detach from being concerned about how an audience is going to react to me, I feel like I give my best talks. And when I stop being concerned, I mean, I had to learn this a long time ago. I didn't know this back even 20 years ago. I can remember calling my agent and friends and saying, where am I on the bestseller list? Back when Erroneous Zones and Pulling Your Own Strings and Sky's the Limit, those books were topping the bestseller list. And then one day, I don't know if it was my wife, probably was, said to me, you're not on the bestseller list. Your book is on the bestseller list. You are not the bestseller list. Big lesson, huge lesson. Detach from whether people are going to buy it, whether people are going to like it, and know in your heart, and then let go, and just watch. And then it starts to show up. I remember when I so desperately wanted to do any national television back in the 70s. Desperately. You know, any show that I could get on, Phil Donahue or the Today Show, Good Morning America, The Tonight Show, and all of that. And none of that was coming. But I was out there, and I had purchased the first couple of printings of my book, and I went out there and I distributed them to various bookstores. I mean, I did crazy things. I filled my car with books, and because every time somebody told me I couldn't do it as a scurvy elephant, I would just say, oh yeah, kind of thing, and thank them for telling me what I couldn't do, and then go out and do it. And then one day, I kind of let go of that, and I wasn't concerned any longer about trying to get on this show. I had a publicist who was doing that. Then I got a phone call from one of the talent coordinators on The Tonight Show, and he called up and he said, would you like to come on and do a pre-interview? Fly out to California. I said, great. I flew out to California, did a pre-interview, and then I flew back to where I was staying in Michigan. Then I got a phone call in Michigan saying, you can do the show next Monday night. It was in August. It was 1976. And Shecky Greene was the host. And I said, great, I'll go on with Shecky Greene. I love Shecky Greene. I flew back out there. I did the show. It was fantastic. I got 20 minutes, the author spot, but we had 2 segments. And it was great. But it was August something, 1976, and it was the day of the Republican National Convention. And Robert Dole was giving the keynote address. And the first time in the history of The Tonight Show, they preempted The Tonight Show. After I had flown back to tell everybody about watch me on The Tonight Show, they had preempted it, and because his speech went too long. I have never been a real big fan of Bob Dole. No, that's just kidding, of course. So I was didn't know what was going to happen and so on. Apparently the next day at the meeting, this friend of mine who was working on the show, his name was Howard Papish, he went in and told them about this guest that had been on Monday night, and Johnny Carson had talked to them and said, look, if he was a good guest, then why don't we invite him to come back out and appear with me before that show airs. They called me back, flew me back out to Michigan, from Michigan. This time there was a limo waiting for me. All right? When I got to the Tonight Show, I did the show on Wednesday night. It was great. We had about 7 or 8 minutes, but we got cut short. And Johnny said to me, would you like to stay over and do the show again tomorrow night? Because we didn't really have enough time to give you. I said, no, I'm busy. I've got my screen door. I said, no. I said, of course. So I did the show the next night. Then on Monday, they showed the preempted show that had been preempted from the week before. So from having absolutely no national exposure of any kind, I had 3 Tonight Show appearances in 4 days. And it's about that business of advancing confidently in the direction of your own dreams. Going out there, doing what your heart tells you to do. I can't tell you how many books I get from people have written this book, and please give me an endorsement, and please tell me how to go about doing. They want these long letters, and I always respond, just do it. Just do it. You can't write my speech. You can't deliver my speech. You can't do it the way I did it. What does your heart tell you? Go out there and never stop. Have that passion and detach from the outcome. Such a powerful lesson. Let go of what's going to come to you, and what is going to come to you will keep showing up in larger and larger and larger amounts.
I believe in being, not striving, arriving. You have to be your goal, as it were. You have to not be looking for the truth, you have to be truth. You can't be looking for healing or a healing method out there at all. You have to be truth. And when you are it is never something that eludes you. I just had a great experience. On the 1st of January of this year, I quit drinking caffeine. Okay? I had a bad addiction to not Coca-Cola, but Diet Coke, Tab. I could drink a crowd pleaser. Easy. In a speech, I could. Or Diet Pepsi or one of those things, those big 64 ounces. I was drinking 8 to 10 cans of that stuff a day. Inadvertently, I just didn't know. I'd have it for breakfast, I'd have it in the afternoon, and I'd always had one when I was driving, and whenever I'd give a speech, I had one. And my wife had said to me, and everybody who knew me was saying to me, that's the thing that's got you. That's the one that you can't get rid of. You talk about being, and it's not good for you. You know how you feel when you drink too much of that stuff. Then I heard a tape by a man named Ram Dass. Ram Dass had a tape about this Buddhist monk who was the son of a Buddhist saint. And this Buddhist saint was a woman, and there's only been like 4 female Buddhist saints ever in the Theravadan Buddhism. And the woman was very upset with her son because he was a narc in Thailand. All right? And in Thailand they have the highest incidence of heroin addiction in the world. The heroin addicts are on the streets everywhere. The woman would say to her son, instead of imprisoning these people, instead of punishing them, instead of putting them in jail, instead of all of these things that you do, why don't you try to help them? Why don't you send them love? Why don't you, as a saint would say, okay? And he said, but I don't know what to do. And she encouraged him to study Theravadan Buddhism, and he did. And this is the most austere of all of the fields of Buddhism. It is the area of Buddhism in which you have to practice like 130 austerities a day. All right? You don't sleep on a mattress, you sleep on the floor. You don't look at anybody of the opposite sex. You don't dance. You watch every single thing that you eat. You say prayers all the time. A lot of these austerities, physical austerities. Well, he got into it, okay? And he thought that these people were too wild for him. Right? So he invented like 30 more austerities of his own. And he was practicing 160 of them a day. And Ram Dass said when he met him, he was like meeting a tree trunk. All right? He was that firm. And what he would do is he would take this truck and he would go through the streets of Bangkok. And he would say to the heroin addicts, if you want to get rid of your addiction in 1 week, 1 week's time, jump on the truck and we'll take you to the monastery and you'll be rid of it in 1 week, guaranteed. he would get these large numbers of people that would jump on. Every week he would take another batch of these addicts. I mean, and I'm talking heroin, the hardest thing in the world for us to overcome with will. And he would take them there, and the first thing he would say to them was, "This is your only chance. This is the only chance that you're going to have in life to be rid of your addiction." And then he would say to them, "I am the treatment. I am bigger than the addiction, and I will show you that." And he would take heroin, and he wouldn't have any effect on him at all. He just wouldn't even react to it. His mind, he had trained himself to be bigger than the addiction, and showed them that. And then he would put them through this violent purging, vomiting kind of thing to cleanse out their system and so on. But the thing that he talked about that is the most profound to me is the idea of becoming the treatment, being, the psychology of being. I have taken Maslow's notion of the psychology of being to levels now in my life to challenge myself in areas that I never thought were even possible before. And one of them was with this minor addiction, caffeine, tab. I mean, he would laugh. Tab? You're having trouble with tab? I admit it's not major, okay? But nevertheless, for me, it owned me. And I let it own me for over 20 years, all right? This was the stuff that was, it was my last addiction, if you will. Smoking had been something I hadn't had anything to do with for 25 years. And drinking, no part of it. It doesn't interest me. And putting poisons into my body and all of these kind of things. And keeping myself in shape, no problem. It was this thing that I kept holding on to. So what I did on the 1st of January this year is I re-listened to that tape, and I became the treatment. It's an amazing thing. See, when you take something into your body that you know isn't good for you, or that you don't like, or let's say it's a cigarette if that's what you're trying to quit, or if it's alcohol or caffeine or too much sugar or whatever it is, and you consume that, what happens is, as that goes through you, it becomes you. You become it. You become one with the poison. And every time you do that, you are the poison. You're not consuming poison. You are not using a method of putting poison into your system. It's not that. That's one step removed from being. Being means you are it. It is you. You are one. You are at unity with the poison. All you have to understand with any addiction that you may have, any kind of an addiction, is that once you become the treatment and you stop being the poison, it's not even a challenge anymore. I mean, it's so easy. I'm not that anymore. That's not what I am anymore. Not that I've mastered it or that I've got a method. That's great that I want to tell you about this method. It's that I am no longer it. It is no longer me. And I am someplace else now. When you get that, when you understand that notion of being, and beginning to apply that in your life, I mean, it's just phenomenal. It's like in religion, people are looking for the 10 Commandments, okay? But in the Bible, it says, live of the truth, doesn't it? The whole idea of the kingdom of heaven, I mean, that's one of the great secrets of the universe that is so simple. I mean, the kingdom of heaven isn't this place that you're going to get to. It is within. It is what you carry around with you. And when you are the 10 Commandments, you don't need them. You don't need any of that. You simply are being that. And when that is you and you are it, you are what Christ called, of the truth. All right? Not looking for it, not trying to get it from someone else, not hoping that someone else can reveal it to you. It is what you are.
And that word infinite is a very important word to think about because it's the opposite of finite. Finite means something begins and ends. If it didn't end any place or didn't begin any place, we wouldn't be able to call it finite. We would say it is always continuing. The minute that it stops, the minute we have a form to it, the minute we place anything on it that is associated with this physical, corporeal world that we all live in, it moves from the infinite to the finite. So to try to define that which is infinite with a brain or a mind that is finite is an impossibility. Lao Tzu knew this and understood this. It's why meditation is such an important part of the process of coming to our highest self, coming to know who we are. It's the place where there are no beginnings. Herman Melville once said that God's one and only voice is silence. Is silence. It's the one place where there's nothing finite there. And Blaise Pascal, the famous French philosopher and scientist, once said that all of man's troubles stem from his inability to sit quietly in a room alone. But most of us just aren't comfortable with this because we have come to believe and trust in the evidence for who we are is on the basis of that which we can touch and see and feel and smell, what our five senses tell us. But our five senses lie to us. William Blake pointed that out beautifully in one of his poems back in 1777. He said, to see the world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower, to hold eternity in the palm of your hand, and infinity in an hour, we are all led to believe a lie. When we see with, not through the eye, which was born in a night, to perish in a night, while the soul slept in beams of light. We are all infinite beings in a temporary human experience. I've said it over and over again. Whenever people ask me what's my very favorite quote, my very favorite observation, it came from Pierre Teilhard, the French priest who was excommunicated from the Catholic Church for his outrageous ideas. He said that we're not here as human beings having a spiritual experience. It's the other way around. We are all infinite spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. And coming to a place where we live our lives from that infinite place and beginning to know our soul. So getting to know the soul, the spirit, and not identifying ourselves on the basis of our physical senses. It's the essence of my newest book, which is a PBS special called Wishes Fulfilled. It's the whole message behind all of it, is to really come up with a specific way to come in contact with this infinite part of ourselves. Now remember, if it's infinite, it doesn't stop any place. It doesn't start any place. That's by definition infinite. So if something doesn't start and doesn't stop, what is it doing? It has to be expanding, doesn't it? The minute it stops expanding, it's finite. We're no longer talking about the soul. We're talking about what Blake said, we see with, not through our eyes. So here's what I jotted down. The ideal of the soul, the thing that it asks for, is neither knowledge, nor light, nor happiness. The ideal of the soul is space, immensity. The one thing it needs, more than anything else, is to be free to expand and to reach out and to embrace the infinite. Yeah, the ideal of the soul is infinity, because that's what the soul is. All of us are here in bodies that we believe is who we are. We're totally convinced of it. I was in a 21-year-old body, and I can't find any part of it anywhere on the planet. But while I was in it, I was absolutely convinced that this is who I am. And And then I moved into another body, and another body, and another body. And the same is true for each and every one of us here, that there is some part of us that is infinite, that is the soul, that is the spirit.
In order to be able to create anything for yourself in your life, you first must be able to conceive of it. And the corollary of that is, if you can't conceive of it, you can't create it. And the problem in trying to teach people to become spiritual masters, enlightened beings, the problem is not in teaching the mechanics of this. The mechanics are really quite simple. What you do is really fairly simple to do. The problem is in convincing people that they have the capacity to do it. Because most of us are stuck in something, now I do have to write this, I'm sorry, something called a paradigm. A paradigm. And a paradigm is a way of thinking or behaving which traps us into believing like the Father with his Son, into believing a truth because we've had it drilled into us by so many people that we can't think any other way. And that's why I say this first key is so important. You have to be able to let go of your past. And before we take a break, I am going to try to give you, I'm not going to try, I'm going to give you the formula for doing that. You can also get stuck in a paradigm in your life, in lots and lots of areas. Most of us have these kinds of things that we hang on to and that we believe so strongly because we have been conditioned by all of our well-meaning sort of other egos who have shown up in our life to guide us and have directed us on a path that is mostly directed by our lower identities. And while we pay some attention to our higher identities, we usually just do it on Sunday mornings or Saturday evenings. And the rest of the time we have sort of a whole different way of approaching it. And a paradigm is something, now I have a teacher that I work with that is really, I think, a very enlightened being. And he told me, he said, if you want to get out of the paradigms that you're in, and I said, like, me? I'm Wayne Dyer. I'm not stuck in anything, all right? He said, well, one of the things you're going to have to learn to do is you're going to have to learn to kill your ego. I said, well, I really can do that. I can kill my ego. I said, what's the test? How do you know when you've killed your ego? He said, well, the test for killing your ego is you check yourself into a dirty, grungy motel room that smells of piss, and you stay in that room until it no longer matters whether you're there or not, and whether anyone visits you or not. And the minimum stay is 3 months. You have to stay until it doesn't matter whether someone visits you or you visit someone else. You just check yourself in. And I said, when? He said, now. I said, well, I got to call. No, you don't call, you do it. I said, well, I already failed the first test. So the second test of being able to get out of a paradigm is to get up between 3 and 6 a.m. every day for 2 years. And in that time period, you walk in the woods, and if there's no woods, you walk in the streets without any fear. You abandon fear and you walk. Or you run. In the woods preferably, and after 2 years, you will know why you are doing it. And I am in that test right now. I've been in it since August the 18th. Another paradigm that I've learned to transcend was when I went through a week of training with Taekwondo. And in Taekwondo, you learn how to use your feet as if they were hands. Now, most of us have been taught that our hands do certain things and our feet do certain things. Our feet are for walking, our hands are for picking things up. But you can learn in quite a short time if you have banished all of that doubt and opened yourself up and have that willing suspension of disbelief. If you willingly suspend that, you can train your feet to do everything that your hand can do. You can train it to punch, you can train it to pick things up, you can train it to do virtually anything you can do with your hand. And people who lose their hands learn this very fast. So it's like a new paradigm. When you first start trying to pick things up with your feet, or to try to use your feet to manipulate or to punch with or to whatever, you're just all discombobulated. Now these are just sort of physical things. You can do this in the area of eating. You can do this in the area of your relationships.
One of my own personal secrets for feeling successful and attracting bountiful abundance into my life has been an internal axiom that I use virtually every day of my life. It goes like this: change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. Once again, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. This has always worked for me, and it will work for you too, I can guarantee it. Your intention to feel successful and experience prosperity and abundance depends on what view you have of yourself, the universe, and most important, the field of intention from which success and abundance will come. My little maxim about changing the way you look at things is an extremely powerful tool. First, examine how you look at things, and then how the spirit of intention does the same. How do you look at life? The way you look at life is essentially a barometer of your expectations based on what you've been taught you're worthy of and capable of achieving. These expectations are largely imposed by external influences such as family, community, and institutions. But they're also influenced by that ever-present inner companion, your ego. These sources of your expectations are largely based on the beliefs of limitation, scarcity, and pessimism about what's possible for you. If these beliefs are the basis for how you look at life, then this perception of the world is what you expect for yourself. Attracting abundance, prosperity, and success from these limiting viewpoints is an absolute impossibility. Take an inventory of how you look at the world, asking yourself how much of your life energy is focused on explaining away potentially optimistic viewpoints by preferring to see the inequities and the inconsistencies and the abundance for all philosophy. Can you change the way you look at things? Can you see potential for prosperity where you've always seen scarcity? Can you change what is simply by changing the way you see it? I say a resounding yes to these questions, and the way to work at changing the way you look at things is to take a hard look at something you may not have previously considered. How does the universal, all-creating field of intention look at life? The field of intention, which is responsible for all creation, is constantly giving. In fact, it knows no bounds to its giving. It just keeps on converting pure, formless spirit into a myriad of material forms. Furthermore, this field of intention gives in unlimited supplies. There's no such concept as shortage or scarcity when it comes to the originating source. So we're looking at two major conceptualizations when we think of the universal mind's natural abundance. The first is that it's perpetually giving, and the second, that it offers an infinite supply. A message to the field of intention that says, "Please send me more money," is interpreted as you're seeing yourself in a state of scarcity. But this source has no concept of scarcity. It doesn't even know what not having enough money means. Thus, its response back to you will be, "Here's a state of needing more money because that's how you think, and I'm the mind with which you think, so here's more of what you don't want and don't have." Your ego-dominated response will be, "My desires are being denied." But the real truth is, the universal source knows only abundance and giving, and will respond with money flowing to you if your intention is, "I have enough money and I allow what I already have enough of to continue to flow to me." If you tell the universal mind what you want, it will respond by leaving you in a state of wanting.
never arriving and always needing more. If, however, you feel that what you intend to manifest has already manifested, you're unified with your intention. Never allowing a moment of doubt or listening to naysayers, you'll be in the presence of that all-creating field of intention. You can't come from shortage, you can't come from scarcity, and you can't come from wanting. You must come from the same attributes as that which allows everything. This is a key word, allowing. Allowing this all-giving source into your life means becoming aware of the resistance that you may be placing in the way of the abundance that's always being supplied. There's a long history of countless thoughts that have formed this field of resistance to abundance. This habit of disallowing grew from the belief system that you've cultivated over the years and that you rely on. Furthermore, you've allowed the resistance of others to enter this picture as well, and you surround yourself with the need for their approval in these matters. You solicit their resistant opinions, read newspaper accounts of all of those who failed to manifest the jobs of their choice, examine government reports about the poor job prospects and the declining economy, watch the television reports belaboring the sorry state of affairs in the world, and your resistance becomes even more convincingly entrenched. You've aligned yourself with the proponents of disallowing. What you need to do is to look at this belief system and all of the factors that continue to support it and say, it's too big of a job to change the entire thing. Instead, I'm going to start changing the thoughts that activate disallowing right here, right now. It doesn't matter what you thought before, or for how long, or how many pressures you're under to maintain your resistance. Instead, stop activating disallowing thoughts today, one thought at a time. You can do so by stating, I feel successful. I intend to feel the abundance that is here now. Repeat these words or create your arrangement of words which continually inundate your thoughts during your waking hours with a new belief of being successful and abundant. Those thoughts will then become what you say in silent prayer-like messages to yourself. I am success. I am abundance. When you're success itself, when you're abundance itself, you're in harmony with the all-creating source, and it will do the only thing it knows how to do. It will be endlessly giving and forthcoming with that which has no resistance to it, namely you and your thoughts. As you practice allowing and living the faith of least resistance, success is no longer something you choose, it's something that you are. Abundance no longer eludes you, you are it, and it is you. It flows unimpeded beyond your resistance. Herein lies another clue to the free flow of abundance. You must avoid becoming attached to and hoarding what shows up in your life. While it's crucial for you to have a firm vibrational matchup with the all-creating abundance of intention, it's just as crucial for you to know that you can't hang on to and own any of the abundance that will be coming your way. This is because the you that would like to hang on to and become attached to your success and your wealth is not really you. It's that troublesome ego of yours. You're not what you have, and you're not what you do. You're an infinite, divine being disguised as a successful person who has accumulated a certain amount of stuff. But the stuff is not you. This is why you must avoid being attached to it in any way.
The affirmation for this principle is, I trust in the universal intelligence that created me to bring my desires to me in just the right way at the perfect time. But one of the things that we have a tendency to do as individuals is to become impatient. Our ego says to us, I want what I want, and I want it now. And we have a tendency to try to tell the universal intelligence, or to tell God, or the metaphor that I used earlier as God is like the ocean and we are like a glass. And so we are really a glass of God, if you will. We are a piece of God. But when you separate yourself, one little drop of water separated from the ocean alone literally can't make anything happen, is very weak and so on. And it is only when you unite yourself with that ocean, when that drop of water becomes united with the ocean, it can do anything. It is part of the universal. When you unite yourself with this divine intelligence instead of separating yourself from it, then you know that this ocean will provide. It will provide for you in precisely the right way that it is supposed to, and in exactly the right time. So patience, infinite patience, is really like a trusting in God. And when you trust in God,
you're trusting in the wisdom that created you. And when you trust in the wisdom that created you, you're trusting in yourself as well. Because you can never be separate from that wisdom. So patience and trust and awareness and higher consciousness are absolutely essential. And then you're able to detach because you're not really concerned about how it's going to show up. You see, your job in this whole business of manifesting, your job is not to say how and when. Your job is to say yes. Just yes. And then you let the how and the when take over. Now, when I say this, I know immediately what the ego part of us starts to think. I want it now, but I have to have it this way. But if I don't get it pretty soon, then I'm going to go broke. And then if this doesn't show up over here, then I'm going to have to go on welfare. And if I have to go on welfare, then and your mind starts playing all of these games about how terrible things are going to be if the person that you want to manifest doesn't show up the way you want him to show up, or if the child that you expect to have isn't showing up on time, or if the finances, or if the job, or whatever. And there's this push and this anxiety and this stress, which is based on fear and based on distrust. But you know, when you have this knowing, as it says in the Course, when you have this certainty, great things have no fear of time. You see, the universal intelligence doesn't operate in the parameters of time. Time is just our way of carving up the oneness. I was reading a story of Einstein as a young boy. And one of the things it said about young Einstein is that when he was a little boy, he picked up a compass. And when he picked up this compass, he noticed that there was something that would move the needle. But he couldn't find anything in the compass that was moving the needle. And he was intrigued by what it was that would move the needle. And he would go and turn in a certain way. He'd make a 90-degree turn, and the needle would turn and face whatever direction it was that he was facing. And yet, he hadn't done anything. And he was intrigued by what this force was, inside or outside, or what it was, that allowed this, what would make this needle move? That force, that universal intelligence, that thing that is nameless, that thing that we can't identify in the physical world, is the provider of all of the things that will manifest to you in the physical world. And it is also the source of your life. So that when you have an alignment with that force, what happens is you get very, very peaceful. And when you get peaceful, you stop insisting. You just know. You just know that it's going to show up. And you're not demanding. You're not looking under the leaves for it. You're not asking for any favors. In fact, you understand that this universal force cannot provide special favors because it is everywhere. And if it were just for you and not for someone else, that would immediately make it not a universal force. It would be now someplace that it isn't. There's no favoritism in this. There's just this positive, absolute, unconditionally loving, knowing force in the universe that holds everything together that you come to honor, to respect, to know. And you know, it's really like, it's like changing around your perspective in life. It's like walking a new path.
I wrote a book and did a film not too long ago called The Shift. And one of the... Thank you. And in there I spoke about and used these words. The direction we take in life is far more important than the place that our ego parks us in this present moment. That who we are is this divine, infinite being that keeps occupying new bodies endlessly until we leave this body and then move on. And there is no beginning. There is no end. There is only now, each and every one of us. So the soul, the part of you that is extraordinary, the part of you that came into this world and knows, I can be anything. I can do anything. I can accomplish anything that I place my attention on. Because if you want to accomplish something, you must first just expect it of yourself. And this means changing around the expectations that you've been conditioned to believe are your dharma or are your destiny. I am limited. I am not entitled to prosperity. I am unable to deal with my physical ailments. I need something else. I need to take pills in order to do it. I need to have somebody else do it for me. That within each and every one of us, there is this marvelous knowing that is really and truly God ourselves, each and every one of us. Over the years, I've written many books, 37 of them to be exact. What has come to become really clear to me in the last few years of my life is that there really are two selves within each and every one of us. Muktananda called the ego, the part of us that has edged God out, ego, edged God out, the false self. And the false self is this part of us that is not authentic. It is the ego. This false self is the part of us that is always trying to win, trying to own things, trying to prove itself. We send our kids off to school and we tell them, be ahead of everybody else, win, no matter what, and so on. And they have a tendency to believe that who they are these bodies, even though the body they're in is going to change and you'll never be able to find it again. And then there's within each and every one of us a higher self. And this higher self is really the soul. It's really the spirit. It's really God. But these two selves are sort of constantly they're not at war so much with each other, but there's this battleground that we have within us. I'll give you an example of it in my own life. Somebody on the internet, a guy named Watkins, has put out a list, because there's lists for everything. The 100 most spiritually influential people alive. And they put out this list, 100 people. And they rank from number 1 to 100. And I'm on the list. The ego is doing this number on us. But there's also the part of us that is divine. And this is the place that I'm addressing here in this program. There's a quote from Joel Goldsmith. Joel wrote so many great books. A Parenthesis in Eternity was one of them. And this is what Joel said. He said, then there are those who reach a stage in which they realize the futility of this constant striving and struggling for the things that perish. Things which, after they are obtained, prove to be shadows. It is at this stage that some persons turn from this seeking for things in the outer realm to a seeking for them from God. And that's who you tuned into today. In the second chapter of Wishes Fulfilled, I call it the higher self. And it gets defined very specifically by this great Bulgarian teacher. His name was Omram Mikhail Ivanov. Our higher self is perfect, omniscient, and almighty. A fragment of God himself. A pure, transparent, luminous quintessence. I love that. I love great writing like that. And that within each and every one of us, there is a place inside of each and every one of us that is all-knowing, that is almighty, that is actually a fragment of God. He then went on to say, the Creator
has planted within every creature a fragment of himself, a spark, a spirit of the same nature of himself. And thanks to this spirit, every creature can become a creator. And this means that instead of always waiting for their needs to be satisfied by some external source, human beings can absolutely work inwardly by means of their own thoughts, their own will, and their own spirit to obtain nourishing, healing elements that they need. This is why he said to all of us, "The teaching I bring to you is of the Spirit, of the Creator, and not of matter." A spark that is in each and every one of us. And this spark, I want you to be able to recognize, because that spark, I'd like to see you have it grow from just a tiny little spark, which means you can hardly see it, to a fragment, to a piece, to a larger chunk, if you will, to a section, so that this spark within you that you see up here is growing and growing and growing until it absolutely becomes even more than you imagined.
So start with pictures of how you want your life to go and how free you want it to be. Reread Walden. Reread Thoreau going to Walden and why he went there. To suck the marrow out of life, to live deliberately, to be encumbered by nothing and no one. Experience that in your mind, just in your mind. Give yourself a half an hour a day to really go within and dress and act and behave and have your relationships and have your business and even your financial affairs exactly the way you want them, just in your mind first, all right? And so you start to picture that. Now that's the step. It's like, when anybody tells me they're quitting smoking but they're still smoking, but they're thinking about it, I say, great, you're on your way. You have to think about it first. The thought process is very important. So even if it takes years to think about it, picture yourself. And after a while, count on this. This is one of the secrets of the universe. It's one of the most important lessons that you can learn in life. If you think about it long enough, if you picture it, you will have to act on it because you can't act on anything else. So get the picture. Get the picture. And as you get that picture, you find yourself shedding things. And then you start practicing doing that. You get rid of some of this stuff. You don't place as much importance on it. You start realizing what's really important in your life. And you start living it that way. It's not a magic formula. It's not something that I'm able to say because I'm Wayne Dyer. It's something that I have lived from the moment that I showed up on this planet and have known that within me, I have the power to create anything I want in my mind. And whatever I create in my mind and keep there, I will have to act upon. I mean, I taught at a university for 7 years in New York, which were wonderful years. 3 of those years, I thought about not teaching at the university any longer. It took me 3 years of picturing myself not doing that at the university any longer. And it was a wonderful university and a wonderful position. I had great colleagues and great students and one of the best times of my life. But it took me 3 years of thinking about it. And now I'm in the process of, I'm writing a book about manifesting miracles in your life. I'm just starting on it now, just getting it going in my mind. And I ask myself, who am I? Who am I to write about how to create miracles in your life? What gives me the authority to be a miracle maker? And yet I've created miracles over and over and over again in my life. And I don't even know that I have the physical tools, that I have the intellectual capacity, that I have the discipline to sit down and do it again and write another book like that. I don't even know any of that. All I know is that I've got the idea in my mind. And I pictured myself doing it. And I wrote the outline, and I sent it into a publisher, and they gave me a wonderful advance, and they think it's a terrific idea. It's still all in the thought stage. There's not a page written. It's all in the thought stage, and yet I can see that book in my mind as clearly. I can tell you what color it's going to be. I can tell you pretty much how long it's all in my mind now. It may take me a year or two of just continually picturing it until Satori will arrive. And I'll walk into my office one day, and I'll sit down, and I'll start on it. Writing the outline for it was just like this for me. I was meditating on Maui, and just sitting in this meditation and asking myself, can I really and truly do this? I mean, this is the greatest undertaking of my life, to write about this sort of thing, miracle making and real magic. And all of a sudden, in my meditation came a voice, literally a voice. It said, do it. Now. Do it. And I came out of the meditation, and I was focused and clear, and I felt I was in that high sort of euphoric state that you get in. It's like drinking without booze, you know? It's like all the benefits of drugs without having to use any chemicals, without having to use any drugs. It's that wonderful, giddy, euphoric, phenomenal feeling that you can get to when you put your mind into a certain state, an alpha state. And I got out of there, and I had a pad of paper with me, and I sat down on a bench right 10 feet away from where I'd been meditating. I wrote for 3 hours. I wrote the outline. I just wrote it. It poured out of me, and I sent it into New York, and I sent it to the publishers, and they said it just seemed to flow. It just seemed so perfect. Like, that's what you do. That was like Satori. That was an instant kind of thing. It's like the hour before I started to meditate that day, I didn't know I was going to write that outline. I just allowed it all to flow. And then it's sort of like you come into grips with something called intuition. And you begin to realize that your intuition is really God talking to you. And it's something that you don't want to ignore. If you do, you'll almost always have to go through a longer period of suffering and obstacles. But if you go with that intuitive voice that says, do it, after a while you trust it, and you trust it, and you trust it, and it unfolds exactly the way it's supposed to, and all the things that come along that you think are inconsistent with it are necessary for you to go through, and you begin to view all of life that way.